Imagine the following. It's been a long day. The sun has set and the night time arrives. You're starting to feel your eyes become heavy and you decide it's time for bed. You slip between the sheets and slowly drift into a deep sleep. Hours later you awake in the dead of night and open your eyes. You try to move but you can't, your body won't respond. You feel paralysed. You feel a weight on top of your chest, choking the breath out of you. Then you realise you're not entirely alone. Your heart starts to beat hard in your chest as you lie there helpless. And then you see it, stepping out of the shadows of the room, a shadow figure. You try in vain to move but you can't. Then the figure draws closer and closer. You're petrified, but you can't scream. You can't move, and you can't take your eyes off it. Eventually it makes its way over to your bed and bends down until it's face to face with you. There's an intense noise like 1,000 voices all speaking at once in a language you don't understand. You feel its breath upon your face, and somehow you find the strength to close your eyelids. The horrendous sounds drift away into nothingness. You feel your limbs come back to life. You reopen your eyes to find that you are awake. There's no one with you, and the room is as it should be. You're all alone, and the prospects of falling back to sleep tonight is very, very slim. Well, that all sounds like the plot of a horror movie, doesn't it? But it's not. It's been medically explained as something called sleep paralysis. But if I was to tell you that millions of people all over the world in many different cultures have experienced this sleep paralysis and have all been visited by the exact same entities, the shadow people. I was a child at the time, only 11 years old. I had had a few bad experiences with sleep paralysis when I slept alone in my bedroom. I was afraid to sleep alone afterwards and begged my parents to allow me to sleep in their room. My father dragged my mattress and sheets into my parents' bedroom and placed it just at the side of his bed, where I would sleep. They allowed me to keep the hallway light on, and with the door closed only halfway, a sliver of light would break into the room. My father would hold my hand until I eventually fell asleep. Later that night, I awoke, but I couldn't move a limb. My body felt dead, my voice had been taken from me, and only my eyes were able to move freely. I looked to my right to see my father's hand still hanging from the bed as he lay fast asleep. I tried to speak, but no sound came out. That's when the feeling of dread came over me. I suddenly became very afraid. My heart pounded in my chest, and then I saw it. In the corner of the room where the shadow was thick, but still I could make out the shape of a man. It seems darker than the shadow surrounding it. It came forward from the shadow, slightly, and just stood there staring for what seemed like an eternity. I looked again at my father's hand, and inside I screamed, urging my hand to just reach out and grab him, but I couldn't. I glanced back over and the shadow figure drew closer. My whole body seemed to get heavier as it approached. I glanced back at my father's hand, and then back at the figure, who was now directly over me, breathing on my face. Then I awoke, screaming, and trying as hard as I could to catch my breath. Other nights the shadow figure would return. Some nights I'd awake on my side and could not see the figure, but only hear whispering in my ear, and words that I did not understand. Let's discuss what sleep paralysis is from a scientific medical view. When you fall asleep, your mind and body enter 4 different stages of sleep. Stage 1 is where you first close your eyes and drift off. At this point it's very easy to wake you up. In stage 2, you enter light sleep. Your body temperature drops and your heart rate slows. You are now falling into deep sleep. Stage 3, you have now entered a deep sleep. It's now harder to awake you, and if you were, you would be slightly disorientated. And then stage 4, after about 90 minutes after falling asleep, you enter REM sleep, which stands for rapid eye movement. Your first cycle of REM sleep lasts about 10 minutes. Each other REM cycle gets a little longer, until you reach your last cycle, which then lasts about an hour. It's in this hour that your heart rate and breathing quicken, as your brain becomes more active, causing you to have more intense dreams. And because of this, the mind shuts down the body, temporarily paralysing you. This is to keep you safe from thrashing out in your sleep or rolling out of bed and injuring yourself. And this is generally when sleep paralysis can take place. You awake from your sleep, but for some reason your body does not, due to you still being in your REM stage of sleep, which can cause an uncontrollable fear and influence hallucinations to take place, which is one explanation for the shadow figures that appear in your room. During an episode of sleep paralysis, you may find it difficult to take deep breaths, as if your chest is being crushed or restricted. You may be able to move your eyes, but some people also find that they cannot. You may also have the sensation that someone or something is in the room with you, and many feel that this presence wishes them harm, causing you to feel very, very frightened. Sleep paralysis can be linked with the following: stress and anxiety, drug or alcohol abuse, and sleep apnea are just some of the suggested triggers. But some people don't buy into this. Some people believe that it's linked to the supernatural. Some people believe that there are actual beings visiting them in the night. And when you start to delve into the different experiences that have been documented throughout the years, it's easy to understand why. The visitations are very similar from person to person. Millions of people around the world have witnessed the same entities appearing in their room in the dead of night, which all seem to act in a similar way. Here are a few of the more popular ones. The first one is a shadow person, who is said to visit you alone or in groups of 3. You can usually be seen standing at the foot of your bed, watching, and moving closer, slowly until he is standing over you as you lie defenceless. Some have been said to have burning red eyes which induce more fear than the others, and can grow even larger the more afraid you become. And then there is a hooded shadow figure who is said to just radiate pure hatred and loathing towards you. The second can be described as an old hag. Many around the world have told the same story of this foul-looking old woman with putrid skin, long unkept hair, and long sharp fingernails. As sleep paralysis takes over your body, she will climb up onto your chest and wrap her long cold fingers around your throat and start to throttle you as you lay helpless, all the time laughing into your face. The entities can also be heard and not seen. Some people have had sleep paralysis where they are not able to open their eyes, but they are fully aware of their surroundings. When the fear of not being able to move or see starts to take over them, they start to hear certain noises, like knocking on doors, or the slamming and shutting of doors, a high-pitched static noise in their ear, the sound of footsteps on the floor, as unseen entities run around your bed and speak threatening words into your ear as you lie helpless, gasping for a breath due to the pressure which is being forced down upon your chest. And finally, probably the most famous of the entities, the Hatman. The Hatman generally just stands in the doorway of your bedroom, looking at you with interest, but usually not bothering you as much as the others. He just stands and observes, though he is just as terrifying. Sometimes he is accompanied by other shadow figures, and he always seems to be in charge. He has also been related to Ouija boards and alien visitations. If you're unlucky enough to be visited by the Hatman, you will notice by his silhouette that he seems to be wearing a fedora, a top hat, or an old-style western hat, with a long black duster coat. And this description of the Hatman, as well as the shadow figures and the old hag, have all been seen by millions of different people all over the world. And the awful terrifying experiences always seem to be the same. And this helps to keep the unnerving theory that there may be more to this than meets the eye. Although not all sleep paralysis experiences involve the shadow people. Sometimes instead of being terrifying, they can be just creepy and weird, like the next listener story, about a visit from an elderly woman holding a lantern. I'm sleeping on my couch in the upstairs living room when the old woman with the lantern comes through the basement door, which leads to the floor I'm sleeping on. I see her enter through the door with her old world lantern, complete with deep orange glow. She kind of gets startled when she notices that I've spotted her. She then says something along the lines of, "Oh, it's nothing," and that she just needs to get something from the kitchen. Cooking, baking related, I couldn't decipher. I think nothing of it. And then I realise it's 3 AM in the morning, and I can't move. I ask her if she can only help me up. I can help her find whatever it is she needs from the kitchen. She looks at me and says of course. She walks over and places her hand on my shoulder and brings me to my feet. All of a sudden I snap awake. I'm lying on my couch and the old lady is gone. But at least she was nice enough to close the door behind her before she left, because I know for a fact that it was wide open when I fell asleep. If you're not convinced that this is entirely supernatural, and you believe that these experiences are being brought on by stress or any other reason, there are a few things that you can try to avoid it happening. You could try lying on your front or your side and try to avoid sleeping on your back, as this can be a trigger for sleep paralysis. You could try sleeping with a tennis ball in your back pocket to avoid your body turning over in the middle of the night. Watch what you eat before bed. Try to avoid heavy meals and foods containing sugar or protein, as this can interrupt the sleep cycle. Also, you might want to avoid drinking alcohol before bed. And I know this one can be hard, as I'm as guilty as this, as probably lots of you out there, but try and avoid looking at your phone before bed, as this also can be a trigger. Have a bath, put music on, try anything to relax yourself. But if you are unfortunate enough to have a sleep paralysis episode, you could try the following to try and break yourself out of it. I know this will be hard to do, but try and reassure yourself that you're in a sleep paralysis episode, and try and just relax yourself and keep yourself calm. Instead of trying to move your whole body and sit up, instead try and concentrate on something simple like your little finger. Just try your best to give it a little wiggle. This was actually suggested by people who actually suffer from sleep paralysis, who claim that this has helped them to break free from the dream and wake up. My next and final listener experience was sent in by a gentleman called Tim, who contacted me via Facebook. Tim wanted the story to be told in his own words and sent me an audio file via email. Tim's story is actually quite unsettling and my heart goes out to him. In Tim's story, he claims that he's been plagued by the Hatman throughout most of his life. I'm so happy to him for actually taking the time and sending his own voice clip in, because I think it gives it a lot more credence and believability coming from the horse's mouth, and he honestly did it a lot more justice than I could ever do it. So without further ado, here's Tim's story, and I'll see you next time, and I hope you sleep well.
I've had many experiences with the Hatman, I guess. I don't know what the appropriate name for him is. I started seeing him when I was very young, and I still see him today. I started telling my wife about my experiences, and we both came to the conclusion that it was probably just a hallucination I created from childhood trauma or trauma I experienced in the military, things of that nature. Until one day we were driving to the gym. We drive separately because we go to work after we leave the gym. And we met up in the parking lot, and her eyes were really wide. I asked her if she was okay. She said, yeah, she's fine, but she was listening to a podcast on the way up to the gym, and it was about other people who have seen the Hatman. And I had never heard of anybody else ever seeing this guy before, other than myself before. So it really started freaking me out, so I started looking more into it and all this stuff, and I never got any definitive answers on what it could be or who it could be and whatnot. People say it's aliens, people say it's demons, people say it's chupacabra, there's all kinds of crazy theories out there. The first time I saw him, I was roughly 4 to 5 years old, maybe 6 years old, and my mom dropped me off at a babysitter's house that I had, and she was arguing with her sister in the other room. Meanwhile, I went into the kitchen, and they had this doorway, and when you opened the doorway, there were stairs that led down into the basement cellar, and I opened the door, I looked down, and I see this shadowy figure wearing a big hat and a dark trench coat at the bottom, and he just starts waving me down towards him. So I decided to walk down towards him. As I was walking down towards him, I ended up stepping on a nail. The nail went all the way through my foot. I fell down the remainder of the stairs, and I cracked the back of my head open. I have the scar on my foot still, and I still got the scar on the back of my skull. And I shaved my head too, so you can blatantly see the scar. And from there, I started seeing him pretty regularly. My mom reminded me of my old, imaginary friend. I named him George, and it was like a little kid who wore blue overalls or something like that, and I would go up to my mom and I would tell him, yeah, we gotta hide George from the scary guy in the garage, and I'd point over to this old garage that was at the neighbor's house across the street. It freaked my mom out. And the weirdest thing about it is our dog Bootsy at the time would never go over in that direction. He would run around all over the place. He's a pretty cool little black Labrador dog, but he was terrified of that old rickety garage from across the street. And my mom told me that when I was a younger kid, I would always say that we can't go over there because that's where the man in the hat, he hangs out over there, and he doesn't like kids, and we gotta keep George away from there. And that kind of creeped me out too. I found some old homework that I made from like first grade, and there's little pictures that you draw, like I want to grow up and be a fish or something weird like that. And one of the pictures is a drawing of your family, and I drew my dad, my mom, my dog, and then a blank spot, and I wrote George and then myself. And on all of it I always said that I had this large family and a brother named George, which I never actually had. I thought I either had a very active imagination or might have been something else going on there, I don't know. But my wife was always very skeptical about supernatural and the paranormal and the whole 9 yards. She's in the medical field, she's very scientific, and as far as I was concerned, I didn't really put much thought into it. I just thought, it is what it is, until we heard that podcast on the way to the gym, and now it's kind of starting to sway my opinion slightly. Well, more than slightly, honestly, to be honest. From there, I remember seeing him just, on the edge of my closet door, or down the hallway really late at night, or something like that. Little things that people could deduce, maybe trick of the light or something weird like that. There was a few instances where it was plain as day that there's something else going on. I grew up in a very chaotic household. There's a lot of chaos going on, we'll say. And I remember one particular night was really rough, and I was in my room, and I was about 16 years old, and then I opened my door, I looked across the hallway to the bathroom that was across the hallway, and I saw him standing there inside my bathtub, and I was angry, and I felt my heart drop and my blood boil and everything going around me, and I just charged at him and dove into the shower curtain. I hit my head on the shower, and I ended up just laying there for a long time. But then I remember I was too afraid to go to sleep. Whenever I tried to go to sleep, it got really warm. It got darker than dark, if that makes sense. Like it was all the lights were off, but it was like a darker, deeper shadow was kind of casting into the room. It was terrifying me. And I would start seeing him. So from then on, when I started seeing him, it was, just that feeling of dread on your chest, kind of weighing down on you, trying to catch your breath, even though your blood is low. Does that make sense? Like, your blood pressure's not high, but you still can't catch your breath. It's kind of weird to explain. And then so I grew up, right? And then I joined the military, I left the military, became a police officer, and then got married and bought a house, the whole grown-up thing to do. And things were going great. I couldn't complain too much about how things were turning out for me. I was pretty excited about it. And then I just started seeing him again. He would be at the edge of my doorway for my master bedroom, and then he'd be a little bit closer the next night, and then I wouldn't see him for a while, but then he'd be in my closet, and each night I would have to stay awake, and I just would not go back to sleep. I'd check all the doors, make sure that all the doors are locked. I got a wood line in my backyard. I'd go out there with the flashlight sometimes, check out the wood line, and I just had this feeling that something was gonna happen if I went to sleep. Now granted, I chalked that up to some kind of PTSD or something from getting ingrained in the military. I was I was a recon scout sniper in the 82nd, so we were taught, 4 hours of sleep in a 24-hour period. Does not have to be consecutive. You fall asleep, you die, kind of thing. So I mean, that's pretty ingrained in my my mental state, I suppose. That's probably something I'll never be able to shake off. But so it started scaring me again. I don't like to admit the fact that it scares me, because I like to think I conquered most of my fears at this point in my life. But it was scaring me. And there was one specific night, me and my wife got into a big argument. A lot of things were said, and I thought that was it. I was feeling extremely dreadful and very, very down on myself, and it was a low point for me. And then again, I saw him standing in my master bathroom, just kind of leaning outside from my shower, just like he was peering right into me, just staring straight into me. Usually when you see him, he's kind of there, and you get that feeling like, oh damn, this guy's here, and it's dreadful, and I don't like him being here, and I'm uneasy. But this one was like when you piss dad off and his eyes are right in your eyes, and you know you messed up. And it's just, he was so intent. And then I looked away, and I tried to look away, and I don't know, it was tearing me down. I started getting these thoughts into my head that I never had before, like thoughts you should never have in your mind. And it was scaring me to the point where I had to tear myself out of bed and leave the room, and I had to get away from that situation, and I was able to, which was good. But then when I went to sleep, I dreamt of this large, dark mirror rising up from the foot of my bed. And then the frame was, the whole room was dark. The frame of the mirror was darker, but then the mirror itself was almost metallic looking. And then the Hatman walked out of there. And when he walked like hard. You could hear his footsteps. Which is weird, because I don't remember ever seeing his legs before. And then he was closer than he ever was before, and he was directly over the side of my bed, as if he was, I don't know, daring me. I don't know. And I felt like I had to make some kind of choice. And I just remember I said, I don't want this. And then he kind of sunk into the ground, and then I woke up in my bed, and my wife was laying next to me asking me if I was okay. And I was sweating, and I said, yeah, I'm okay, just a bad dream. But then I remembered my wife was staying at the hotel that night because it was a friend's wedding reception, so she was staying at the hotel because she was in the wedding, and I had gone home angry. So I knew my wife wasn't in bed with me, so that freaked me out. And then I went to get out of my bed, and then as I got out of my bed, I woke back up in my bed again for a second time. But when I woke back up in my bed for the second time, I couldn't move. I couldn't actually pick myself up off the bed. I couldn't talk. I remember I kept trying to yell for somebody to wake me up, I guess, even though I knew I was awake, but I couldn't move. And I kept, I guess I was just moaning really really loud, as weird as it sounds, but I was really screaming from the inside, but it wouldn't verbalize. And then finally I was able to, and it kind of jolted out of bed, and it freaked me out, and I didn't go back to bed. I ended up throwing on my suit and going back to the wedding and making up with my wife. And then we patched everything up, so that was all great, and better than ever now. And then so that was that time. That was pretty rough. So it was shortly after that was the experience I told my wife about it. And then I told her about it when I was a kid. And then that led up to the gym where she heard the podcast. After we found that out, we started looking it up and reaching out and asking people if anybody else has seen this and all this other stuff. And then once I started reaching out more and more, I started seeing them more often. And it was just on the edge of my closet. It was like the same spot almost every time. So I started thinking, maybe this is in my head, and maybe it's a trickery of a light, and that was just a bad couple dreams. So I rearranged the entire bedroom. So the angle was different, the lighting was different. There's no way I could have reproduced that same exact imagery with the trick of the lights or whatever it was. But again, he would be there. And then again, he would be there. And again, it would just be that sinking feeling in my chest over and over and over again. And then I started getting mad. I started getting upset because I was sick and tired of it. I wanted to know what it was. I wanted to know who he was. So I started making my own demands. I started saying, I'm not afraid of you, even though I was. Tell me who you are. Tell me what you want. I want to figure this out. And I said that for, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 times. And then I was asleep one night. And I was, in my dream, I was driving in the car. And I had my best friend next to me. And we were talking about stuff and whatnot in the dream. And then I asked him, how did we get to this place? Where are we even going? And he said, my friend said, it doesn't matter where we're going here. Why are you being weird? And I asked him if we were dreaming. He said, no, we're not dreaming. Why would we be dreaming? And I said, no, this is a dream. This isn't real right now. I went to bed. There's no way I should be in a car right now. And it's winter and we're in the middle of a desert. And I don't live in a desert. And then the guy in my dream, my friend in my dream, kept telling me, you're awake, you're being crazy right now, stop being so weird. Of course this is real. You're trying to tell me that I don't exist, I'm not real? And I said, you don't exist. I mean, you do exist, but this doesn't exist. This is a dream. This right now isn't real, and I want to wake up right now. And then I woke back up in my bed again, but again I couldn't move. I couldn't make any bodily movements. I couldn't force my body to move. It was like I was stuck in a huge shell, just yelling. And I remember I was yelling for my wife, wake me up, you gotta wake me up. And then she did. And when she woke me up, she said that I jolted back awake, and she said that I was making weird moaning noises, and she wanted to make sure I was okay. And I said, yeah, I was laying there for like over an hour, screaming for you to wake me up. She was like, oh, that's really weird and scary. I was like, yeah. And then I saw like a silhouette of Hatman next to my closet again. Then I asked my wife, do you see that? I pointed at it. She's like, babe, there's nothing there. I was like, okay, fine. And then I stayed up and hung up my dogs and whatnot. So after that, my wife and I were watching this TV show called American Gods, and I was taking pictures of my dog. My dog's named Obi-Wan. And as I was taking pictures of my dog, we were looking at the pictures, and then you could see clear as day a figure with a shadow of a figure wearing a hat and a trench coat sitting on my porch in one of our chairs. And then in the next picture, which was 1/10 of a second later that was taken, same exact figure is across the lawn in the neighbor's yard up against his wall. And then in the next photo, the figure is closer to my window. So I have these photos saved. And when I saw that, I started making demands again. I started saying, I want to know who you are. I want to know what this is. I'm not afraid. I just want to know. And the next day, it was about the middle of the day, and I was laying on my couch and was watching TV, and I fell asleep. And in my dream, I was attached to like a piece of string, and I was being held up by this shadowy figure in a hat and a long trench coat. And he was a giant, like he was huge, like I was the size of him. Like picture someone holding a mouse by its tail, and that was the equivalent of him holding me by this string. And I jolted up in my couch where I was sleeping, and I looked to my left, and clear as day, within arm's reach, he was right there next to me in the middle of the day, just staring at me with this huge grin from one ear to the other, and that was it. All he had was just that smile. And his face was, you couldn't really see his face, but you could see contortions in it, like it was pressed together in a very unnatural way into the center, and then everything else was just contorted outward from his huge grin from ear to ear. And that terrified the hell out of me. I felt like someone grabbed my heart and ripped it through my back and was holding me down and dragging me deeper into some hole I've never even been in before. And then I jolted awake, but again, I couldn't move on the couch. I was trying to move. I was trying to open my eyes. I remember trying to open my eyes, and my eyes were heavy, and I was trying to yell and scream. My wife wasn't home, and I felt like I was never going to wake up, and this was it. I was done. I was catatonic. I was stuck in that position. And then I was able to wake up. I jolted up. I freaked out. I looked around, and he wasn't there. And then my dogs were all freaking out. They wouldn't go near the area where he was sitting, and that was it for me. I'm not asking any questions, keeping to myself. Fine. You don't want to be messed with? I'm not going to mess with you. Got it. And now my wife has told me that she started seeing him a couple times. She'd wake up in the middle of the night and he would just be standing there, and it's starting to freak her out now too. That last dream I just mentioned, that happened about 2 months ago. I haven't really seen him since then, but yeah. So I don't know, I don't know what it is. I have no idea. I just know that's my experiences with it, and I don't like it. And any answers out there would be appreciated.